January 1979. The Khmer Rouge regime collapses. Pol Pot and his inner circle flee into the jungles near the Thai border, leaving behind a nation in ruins.
For Cambodians, the nightmare had lasted just under 4 years, but it had torn apart centuries of history and tradition. The cities had been emptied. The schools, the hospitals, even the Buddhist monasteries, places of knowledge, healing, and faith, had been turned into prisons or execution grounds.
2 million people, almost a quarter of the population, were gone. They had been executed in the killing fields, starved in forced labor camps, or worked to death in the rice paddies. Phnom Penh, once called the Pearl of Asia, was now a hollow shell. Streets were silent, electricity grids no longer functioned, the currency had been abolished, the economy obliterated. Families wandered the countryside searching for lost relatives, often finding only mass graves. The Cold War had not ended. In fact, it was about to reshape Cambodia's fate all over again. What lay ahead was not just reconstruction, it was a new kind of battle, fought not only with weapons, but with diplomacy, aid, and ideology. Cambodia, still bleeding from genocide, had become a pawn on the world's chessboard. This is the story of America's unseen role in post-Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge regime had collapsed under the weight of Vietnamese military intervention, but the end of Pol Pot's rule did not mean peace. Cambodia was a broken country. Agriculture was in ruins, schools and hospitals were destroyed, and entire villages were depopulated. The humanitarian crisis was staggering. Hundreds of thousands of Cambodians fled across the border into Thailand, fearing retaliation, starvation, or renewed fighting. Refugee camps sprang up almost overnight, chaotic, overcrowded, desperate. International relief agencies tried to respond. The United Nations, the Red Cross, Oxfam, Médecins Sans Frontières, and countless smaller organizations rushed to deliver aid. Yet even humanitarianism became politicized. Because the new Cambodian government, the People's Republic of Kampuchea, backed by Vietnam, was not recognized by much of the international community, foreign aid often bypassed Phnom Penh. Instead, resources flowed to camps along the Thai border, where various resistance groups, including remnants of the Khmer Rouge, consolidated their strength. Cambodia was caught in a cruel paradox. To help the refugees was to risk empowering armed groups, some of whom bore responsibility for the atrocities. For Washington, Beijing, and their allies, this was not only a moral dilemma, it was also an opportunity. When Vietnam toppled Pol Pot in 1979, it was hailed as liberation by many Cambodians. But for the United States, it was a strategic nightmare. Vietnam was allied with the Soviet Union, and Washington feared the spread of Soviet influence across Indochina. This is where Cold War logic collided with Cambodian tragedy. The US, China, Thailand, and even some ASEAN nations began to support the resistance groups fighting the Vietnamese-backed government. The most powerful of those groups? The Khmer Rouge, now rebranded and regrouping in the jungles along the Thai border. Incredibly, despite their record of genocide, the Khmer Rouge retained Cambodia's official seat at the United Nations, backed by US and Chinese diplomacy. The world's premier international body continued to recognize a genocidal regime because geopolitics demanded it. Covert aid flowed. Chinese weapons moved across Thai borders. American intelligence facilitated supply lines. And while official rhetoric condemned the atrocities, realpolitik dictated otherwise. America spoke of humanitarianism, but its actions told a different story. On one hand,
Washington poured money into refugee assistance programs, highlighting its commitment to human rights. On the other, it indirectly tolerated and in some cases enabled the rearmament of Khmer Rouge forces.
Sanctions against Phnom Penh deepened the suffering. The Vietnamese-backed government, however flawed, was left isolated, unable to access international financial systems or development aid.
Cambodia's cities remained in ruins. Infrastructure lay unrepaired, and civilians, already traumatized by genocide, now faced economic strangulation.
The paradox was stark. America claimed to be helping Cambodia recover. In reality, its policies prolonged instability.
Throughout the 1980s, Cambodia remained a battlefield. Viet troops fought insurgent groups across the countryside. The Khmer Rouge operated alongside other resistance factions like Frunzenpec and KPNLF. Thailand served as a conduit for supplies. Villagers were trapped in the crossfire. Minefields spread across farmland. Entire regions became militarized zones. For Washington, this was proxy war. For Cambodians, it was endless violence. And the longer the fighting continued, the deeper the divisions within Cambodian society became. By the late 1980s, the Cold War was shifting. The Soviet Union weakened. Vietnam, exhausted and isolated, began withdrawing its troops from Cambodia. In 1991, the Paris Peace Agreements promised a new future. The United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, UNTAC, arrived to oversee elections and disarmament.
But peace was fragile. The Khmer Rouge refused to disarm, continuing guerrilla warfare into the 1990s. Political factions fought for dominance, and violence marred the new democracy.
The scars of U.S. influence remained visible. Prolonged conflict, stunted development, a lingering distrust of Western motives.
The story of U.S. influence in post-Khmer Rouge Cambodia is not one of rescue. It is a story of geopolitics played out on the backs of ordinary people. The result? A decade of instability, a generation lost, and a fragile nation left to rebuild under impossible odds. Today, Cambodia's memory of this period remains contested. Some view America as a distant benefactor. Others see it as a force that prolonged their suffering. The truth lies somewhere in between.